"Anna, why are you crying?" The words came sharp and sudden from Miss Rebecca Morgan, halting the cheerful noise of Oakwood Elementary's first-grade classroom. Children stopped mid-laugh. Crayons hung in the air. Even the squeak of sneakers on tile quieted. All eyes turned to the doorway where 6-year-old Anna Wilson stood, tears dripping silently down her dark cheeks. Her purple backpack slid off one thin shoulder, dangling as if too heavy for her frail frame. She clutched it like armor. Anna's eyes flicked to the window, then to the closed classroom door. Her lips moved without sound. Finally, in a trembling whisper, she said, "He's still there." The children tittered nervously, confused. Miss Morgan felt the hairs rise on the back of her neck. She crouched low to meet Anna's eyes, but the girl wouldn't look at her. Instead, Anna shuffled inside, slipping into her seat with the kind of silence that seemed rehearsed. Trying to keep the morning steady, Miss Morgan launched into calendar and weather time, but her gaze kept drifting toward Anna. The child sat stiff, her shoulders tight beneath a pale, thin cotton blouse, her fingers drumming anxiously against the desk. By art period, the unease grew into something impossible to ignore. "Draw whatever's in your mind today," Miss Morgan announced brightly, handing out paper. "It could be your home, your family, even your dreams." Bye. Laughter bubbled around the room as children filled pages with houses, balloons, and stick figures with wide smiles. But when Miss Morgan passed Anna's desk, her stomach dropped. Anna's page was unlike anything else in the room. On the left side, she had scrawled a face, an adult man's face glaring with sharp, furious eyes and a mouth twisted into a snarl. His head leaned in from outside, a rectangle clearly meant to be a door. On the right, down near the bottom corner of the page, she had drawn a small child huddled in a corner, knees to chest, arms wrapped tight. Above the crouching figure were words written in jagged, uneven strokes. "Don't hurt me anymore." Miss Morgan's blood ran cold. She set a hand on the desk, steadying herself. "Anna, what is this?" she asked gently. Anna's hand shot across the paper, as if she could erase it with her palm. Her lips quivered. "It's nothing," she whispered. Then, like a dam breaking, tears welled and poured down her cheeks. "Anna," Miss Morgan pressed, lowering her voice. "Who is this man? Why did you draw him at the door?" But the girl only shook her head violently and began to sob harder. Miss Morgan reached to comfort her, then stopped. The girl's blouse had shifted as she curled forward, and for the first time Miss Morgan saw what lay beneath. A faint purplish mark, round and ugly, stretched across the soft skin of Anna's upper arm. Another shadow of bruising peeked above the neckline at her collarbone. The teacher's heart clenched so hard she nearly gasped aloud. She forced herself not to startle Anna further, but her mind raced. These weren't playground scrapes. These were bruises, deep and deliberate. She inhaled shakily, fighting tears of her own. Then she rose and crossed the room quickly, her heels clicking sharp against the tile. She opened the supply closet and pulled out the classroom phone, her hands trembling as she dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Her voice shook but carried urgency. "This is Oakwood Elementary," she said, steadying herself on the counter with her free hand. "I have a student, 6 years old, Anna Wilson. She came to class crying. She's drawn disturbing images, an angry man outside a door, a child in a corner with the words, 'Don't hurt me anymore.' I just saw bruises on her body, multiple bruises. Please send someone immediately." Her words tumbled out too quickly, but the operator's calm tone steadied her. "We'll dispatch an officer and Child Protective Services right away, ma'am. Keep the child safe. Do not confront anyone until help arrives." "Yes," Miss Morgan whispered. Her throat tightened as she glanced across the room. Anna sat with her head buried in her arms, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The other children had gone quiet too, sensing something grave in the air. Miss Morgan turned her back to shield her own tears. Then she breathed deeply, composing herself, and walked back. She knelt by Anna's desk again. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "I want you to know you're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. You are safe here with me." Anna lifted her head, eyes swollen and wet. For a moment, there was a flicker of trust, but then she whispered a sentence that made Miss Morgan's blood freeze. He said, "If I tell, he'll come for you too." If this story moved you, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to light. Miss Morgan swallowed hard, forcing a calm she did not feel. She smoothed Anna's hair back gently and held her close. Her mind burned with a single thought. Whoever did this will not touch her again. The sirens would come soon, and when they did, the shadows that had haunted Anna would no longer remain hidden. For the first time in her career, Miss Morgan knew she was not just a teacher. She was the line between a child and a predator. And she had just stepped into a battle she could not walk away from. The wail of a siren grew faintly in the distance, then cut off suddenly as the vehicle turned onto Oakwood's quiet suburban street. Inside the classroom, the children stirred with nervous energy. Some whispered to each other, their voices sharp with curiosity, while others sat frozen, sensing that whatever was happening had pierced far beyond the usual rhythm of their young lives. Miss Rebecca Morgan pressed a calming finger to her lips, urging them to stay quiet, though her own heart hammered loud enough she swore Anna could hear it. Anna sat at her desk still, her head bowed over her folded arms. The tears had dried into faint streaks on her cheeks, but her eyes held a glassy, vacant quality that unsettled the teacher more than the crying had. The bruise on her arm haunted Rebecca's vision every time she blinked. Each breath she drew seemed to carry the weight of both terror and resolve. She had done the right thing by calling. Now she needed to stay strong until help came. The door swung open moments later. In walked Officer James Carter, his presence filling the doorway before he even spoke. He wasn't dressed in heavy tactical gear, just a plain suit jacket, badge at his belt, and a calmness in his step that immediately eased the other children. He knew better than to come in with sirens blazing or voices raised. Behind him trailed the school's principal, Mr. Robert Winters, his face pale and grave. "Miss Morgan?" Carter's voice was steady, low. "I'm Officer Carter, Family Services Division. We'll keep this as calm as possible. May I?" He gestured toward the hallway. Rebecca nodded and stepped out with him, pulling the door nearly shut behind. She whispered quickly, recounting everything. Anna's tears at the doorway. The disturbing drawing of the furious man outside the door. The child drawn huddled in the corner. The words, "Don't hurt me anymore." And finally the bruises glimpsed under her blouse. Her voice broke when she repeated the child's whispered warning. "He said if I tell, he'll come for you too." Carter's jaw tightened at that, though he kept his face otherwise unreadable. "Thank you for calling immediately," he said. "You may have saved her life." The words sent a chill down Rebecca's spine. She had known the situation was serious, but to hear it spoken in those terms left her shaken. Carter continued, "We'll need to speak to her gently, here in the school first. If we can get even fragments, it will help us protect her." Principal Winters cleared his throat. "Should I clear the class?" "No," Carter replied firmly. "We don't want her singled out in a way that feels like punishment. Keep the others occupied quietly. Miss Morgan, would you help facilitate? She trusts you." Rebecca nodded, her throat too dry for words. Together they stepped back inside. Carter knelt beside Anna's desk, lowering himself so his broad frame seemed smaller, less threatening. His voice softened to a register that seemed meant for lullabies rather than police reports. "Hi there, Anna. My name's James. May I sit with you a moment?" Anna lifted her eyes slowly. She studied him with suspicion, but something in his calm demeanor eased her trembling. She gave the faintest nod. Carter sat cross-legged beside her desk, notepad resting untouched on his knee. He didn't begin with questions. Instead, he looked at her drawing, still lying partly crumpled on the desk. "That's a powerful picture you made," he said gently. "It takes courage to draw what scares you." Anna's lower lip trembled. "I wasn't supposed to," she whispered. "Supposed to?" Carter asked. "Who told you that?" Anna shook her head, pressing her face against her sleeve. "He says don't tell, or—" Her voice trailed off into silence, her shoulders curling inward. Miss Morgan crouched nearby, her own voice steady but warm. "Anna, you're safe here. No one can hurt you here." For a moment, the little girl looked between her teacher and the officer, as though weighing the truth in their eyes against the threats echoing in her mind. Then Carter spoke again, even softer. "Did he hurt you, Anna? You don't have to say his name right now. Just, did someone hurt you?" He kept his tone patient, giving her space to answer. Slowly, Anna nodded, a tiny movement, but undeniable. Rebecca swallowed back a sob and steadied herself. Carter's eyes flicked to the teacher, then back to Anna. "Thank you for being brave. I'm going to make sure you don't get hurt again. Do you believe me?" His words hung heavy in the quiet classroom. Anna stared at him for a long time, then whispered, "He's outside sometimes. Watching. By the door. By the window." Her voice cracked on the last word. "Miss." Morgan felt her blood chill. The drawing had not been fantasy in the child's mind, it was memory. Carter nodded slowly, jotting quick notes at last. "That's important, Anna. Thank you. Now listen carefully. We'll need to talk to your mom, and we'll make sure you're safe. No one is allowed to scare you like that." He glanced to Rebecca. "For today, we'll remove her from the classroom discreetly. Family services will provide protection." Rebecca nodded, though her chest ached at the thought of the child leaving with strangers. But then Anna reached for her teacher's hand, gripping tightly. "Don't let him take me back," she pleaded, eyes wide. "Promise." Rebecca bent down, tears threatening again. "I promise, sweetheart. You're not going back to the hurt. Not ever." She kissed the top of her student's head, her voice breaking on the vow. Carter rose and spoke quietly to Principal Winters, arranging for another staff member to escort the rest of the class to the library. When the children filed out, a chorus of curious glances followed Anna, who remained seated with Carter and Miss Morgan. Rebecca noticed how Anna shrank under the stares. She whispered reassuringly, "They don't know, honey. They just see you're special." Once the room was quiet, Carter leaned close again. "Anna, do you want to come with me now? We'll go someplace safe. Miss Morgan can walk you to the office. Then I'll ride with you to meet some nice people who will help." His eyes sought her trust. Anna hesitated, then whispered, "Only if she comes too." Her small hand clutched Rebecca's fingers. Rebecca squeezed back. "I'll be with you until you feel safe," she promised. Minutes later, as the autumn sunlight spilled across the playground outside, Anna walked between her teacher and the officer toward the front office. To anyone watching, it looked like an ordinary school day, but to Rebecca, each step felt like a march into battle against an unseen enemy. The bruises, the drawing, the whispered threat, all of it burned in her memory. At the office door, Carter paused. "Miss Morgan, thank you for acting. Many don't. Because you did, she has a chance." Ugh. Rebecca nodded, her throat thick with emotion. She bent to Anna once more. "Remember, sweetheart, you are not alone anymore." As they stepped into the principal's office where the next stage of questioning would begin, Rebecca's resolve hardened. Whoever had scarred that child, whoever lurked in shadows by doors and windows, would soon find that their grip had been broken. And justice, quiet and steady, had just walked through Oakwood Elementary's front doors. The principal's office smelled faintly of coffee and floor polish. Its blinds were drawn, muting the midday light into gray stripes across the carpet. Anna sat curled on a chair near the wall, her small hands folded tightly in her lap. Her purple backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. Beside her, Miss Rebecca Morgan kept one hand gently resting on the girl's shoulder, a silent promise that she wasn't alone. Across the room, Officer James Carter spoke into his radio, his tone low but deliberate, arranging the next steps. Then the door opened, and the atmosphere shifted. Sarah Wilson entered briskly, her hospital scrub still wrinkled from the overnight shift, her ID badge swinging from a lanyard. Her eyes landed first on her daughter, then darted to the officer, then to Miss Morgan. A frown creased her face. "What's going on? Why am I being called here like this?" Her voice carried the edge of exhaustion sharpened into defensiveness. "Mrs. Wilson," Principal Winters began, his hands clasped formally on the desk. "Thank you for coming so quickly. There's been a situation with Anna this morning that we need to discuss. Officer Carter from Family Services is here to assist." Sarah stiffened, shifting the strap of her purse higher on her shoulder. "Family Services?" Her voice rose. What has my daughter said? Before Carter could answer, Anna whispered, Mommy. She stood, almost on instinct, but then stopped short, uncertainty freezing her mid-step. Sarah's expression softened momentarily as she bent to hug the child. Oh, baby. Are you okay? Did you get scared again? She stroked her daughter's hair, then straightened and turned back sharply toward the adults. She has nightmares. Always has. I work nights. She gets anxious. But this doesn't require police. Rebecca's heart clenched. She forced herself to speak steadily. Sarah, today Anna came to class crying. She drew a picture of a man at the door, with words, very disturbing words, and when she bent forward, I saw bruises on her arms and collarbone. She paused, her voice tightening. Bruises that don't look like simple play injuries. Sarah blinked, her cheeks flushing. Bruises, kids bruise all the time. She plays in the stairwell at our complex. She bumps into rails. You're blowing this out of proportion. Her eyes hardened toward Rebecca, suspicion dripping from her tone. Teachers aren't supposed to jump to conclusions. Officer Carter stepped forward, calm but firm. Mrs. Wilson, I need you to listen carefully. We are not here to accuse. We are here to ensure Anna is safe. The drawings and her words are enough to require an immediate investigation. Bruises in multiple stages of healing raise concern. We will need to ask questions. No, Sarah shook her head rapidly. No. You don't understand. I'm a single mother. I work 12-hour night shifts to keep a roof over our heads. She's alone a lot. Yes, but I love her. She's all I have. There is no man, no one who hurts her. Anna stirred at that, her voice tiny. Mommy, he's at the door sometimes. The room froze. Sarah crouched, eyes wide. Anna, stop. You're scaring people. It's just shadows, just dreams. Her tone was pleading now, almost desperate, but the girl shook her head fiercely, clutching her notebook tighter. Tears welled in her eyes. It's not dreams. He says if I tell, he'll hurt me again. Carter knelt near the child, speaking gently. Anna, can you tell me, is this man someone you know? Does he come into your home? The girl's lips trembled. She glanced at her mother, then buried her face in her backpack, refusing to speak. Her silence was louder than words. Sarah's voice cracked. You see? She gets confused. She misses her father. He left when she was a baby. Sometimes she makes up things. It's grief, not abuse. She rose, pacing. And now, you're going to drag us into a system that will make things worse. I can't lose my job. I can't have social workers. Rebecca cut in, unable to stay silent. Sarah, she begged me not to let him hurt her anymore. That's not imagination. Her voice shook with the memory of the words scrawled across the drawing. You have to face that something is happening. Carter held up a steadying hand. Let's all take a breath. Mrs. Wilson, regardless of your belief, the law requires that we investigate. Tonight, Anna will not be left alone. We will arrange protective supervision while we begin inquiry. That is non-negotiable. His tone brooked no argument. Sarah's face crumpled, torn between anger and fear. You can't just take her from me. No one is taking her from you, Carter replied firmly. But we are ensuring she is safe until we know more. The worst thing you can do right now is refuse cooperation. If you love her, work with us. The room fell into silence. Anna peeked from behind her backpack, her eyes wet but steady. For the first time, she whispered with fragile courage, Mommy, please, don't let him come back. The plea shattered what remained of Sarah's resistance. Her shoulders sagged. Tears brimmed in her eyes. She sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. God help me, she whispered. I didn't see. I thought it was just bad dreams. Rebecca moved closer, her hand resting gently on the mother's arm. What matters is what you do now. Carter nodded. We'll start tonight with a home visit. We'll examine security, talk to neighbors, and ensure no unauthorized individuals have access. Meanwhile, Anna will stay either with you under supervised protection or with a temporary safe placement if needed. His eyes locked with Sarah's. This is about her safety, not blame. May. Sarah lowered her hands, meeting his gaze. At last, she nodded slowly, broken but resigned. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't let them take her from me forever. Anna climbed into her mother's lap then, small arms wrapping around her neck. Don't leave me alone tonight, she whispered. Sarah's tears fell freely as she kissed her daughter's hair. I won't, baby, I promise. For a long moment, the office was filled with nothing but the sound of quiet sobbing and the faint ticking of the wall clock. Rebecca closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer that justice, so often late, would not fail this child. Finally, Carter rose. I'll make the arrangements now. Tonight we start protecting Anna. Tomorrow, we begin finding the truth. As he stepped out into the hallway to call his unit, Rebecca looked at Sarah and saw both the guilt of a mother who had failed to notice and the fierce determination of one who had just awakened. In that moment, she knew this was only the beginning. Shadows still waited outside doors and windows, but now they had been named, and naming was the first step toward banishing them. The Maple Grove apartments stood tired and gray against the fading light. Paint peeled from the siding, and the stairwell railings rattled with every gust of wind. The hum of television seeped through thin walls, mingling with the muffled arguments of neighbors. Officer James Carter parked his sedan by the curb, stepping out with practiced calm. Beside him, Miss Rebecca Morgan tightened her coat against the chill air. She glanced at the row of windows overhead, wondering which belonged to Anna. The thought that a frightened child had spent countless nights here alone twisted her stomach. Sarah Wilson led them up the cracked steps, keys jangling in her trembling hand. Anna clung to her mother's side, purple backpack strapped tight as ever. She hadn't spoken much since leaving the school, but her eyes darted nervously at every shadow that fell across the stairwell. Carter followed close, his eyes sweeping the surroundings with quiet vigilance. Which unit, he asked. 2B, Sarah replied, her voice small. She inserted the key, her hand shaking so badly she had to try twice. The door creaked open onto a modest living room lit only by a floor lamp in the corner. A thrift store couch sagged under the weight of its years. Dishes waited in the sink. A faint scent of antiseptic clung to Sarah's hospital bag tossed near the door. Carter stepped inside first, scanning. We'll do a quick walkthrough, he said. Then we'll set up for the night. Anna hesitated on the threshold until Rebecca crouched and offered her hand. Come on, sweetheart. I'm right here. The girl nodded faintly, allowing herself to be guided in. She went straight to her bedroom door, pushing it open. Inside, the small bed was neatly made, but the walls bore the marks of restless nights, paper taped with frantic scribbles, black crayon shadows stretching across pages. A small recorder sat on the nightstand. Rebecca's chest tightened at the sight. Carter inspected the window. The oak tree outside loomed, its branches scraping the glass in the wind. Streetlight beams twisted the limbs into grotesque shapes across the wall. That explains the imagery, Carter murmured, but not the bruises. Sarah hovered near the doorway. I told you, she bumps herself. These apartments, they're not safe for kids. She rubbed her arms, her tone defensive, but fading into guilt. Rebecca turned, her eyes gentle yet unyielding. Sarah, a bruise on the collarbone isn't from a railing. Someone touched her. The mother flinched, as if struck. Carter set down a folder on the dresser, pulling out paperwork. Protective supervision begins tonight. I'll stay here until midnight. Another officer will take over the rest of the shift. Dr. Chen will visit tomorrow morning for a formal assessment. He glanced at Anna. For tonight, no one is left alone. Anna sat on the bed, her knees tucked under her chin. She whispered, He comes when the lights go out. Rebecca sat beside her. Then we'll keep lights on, she said gently. She pulled from her bag a small gift she had bought on instinct that afternoon, a star projector nightlight. She plugged it in, and tiny constellations scattered across the ceiling. Anna's eyes widened with wonder. For a moment, her face softened into the ghost of a smile. "It makes the dark look pretty," she murmured. But as the evening wore on, tension thickened. Carter asked questions gently while Sarah reheated leftover soup in the kitchen. "Anna, can you tell me? Has someone come inside here? Someone who hurts you?" The girl shook her head quickly, clutching her backpack. "He doesn't come when Mommy's home. Only when she's gone." Carter's eyes met Rebecca's. Silent understanding passing between them. Sarah overheard and called sharply from the kitchen, "Anna, stop with these stories." Her voice cracked. She set the spoon down with a clatter. "She's scaring herself with imagination. I can't accept that someone's been here under my nose." Rebecca rose and approached the mother quietly. "Sarah, denial won't protect her. Believing her might." Sarah's shoulders sagged. She pressed a hand over her eyes, whispering, "If you're right, it means I failed in the worst way." Rebecca's hand rested on her arm. "It means you have a chance to make it right." Later, as the clock crept toward 9, the apartment grew silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Carter sat by the door, notebook open, listening to every creak in the hallway beyond. Rebecca stayed with Anna in her room, reading softly from a storybook while the starlights glimmered overhead. But midway through a sentence, Anna stiffened. Her head turned toward the window. "He's here," she whispered. Rebecca's throat tightened. "What do you see, sweetheart?" Anna pointed. On the glass, the shadow of the oak's limbs shifted but then lingered oddly, as if a shape had paused between the branches. Carter was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. He pulled the curtain back, but the sidewalk below was empty. Still, the faint echo of footsteps retreated into the night. He glanced at Rebecca. "We'll increase patrol. Someone could be watching." Anna trembled. Rebecca pulled her close, whispering steady assurances. "You're safe. He can't come in." Yet her own heart hammered with unease. Sarah came rushing in, wide-eyed. "What happened?" Carter explained quietly, then instructed her firmly. "From now on, lock every window. Keep the chain on the door. Do not open to anyone after dark. Do you understand?" Sarah nodded, pale. By midnight, Anna had drifted into uneasy sleep, clutching her stuffed bunny. Carter stepped out into the hallway to meet the relief officer, giving a detailed report. Rebecca lingered a moment longer, watching the child's chest rise and fall under the starlit ceiling. She whispered to herself, "Hold on, little one. We won't let the shadows win." When she finally stepped out into the cool night air, Rebecca looked up at the windows of Unit 2B. Behind the glass, a tiny girl slept in fragile peace for the first time in weeks, watched over by more than just a tired mother. She knew the road ahead would be brutal. Questions, investigations, maybe even court. But tonight, at least, the silence was guarded. Tonight, justice had begun to take its first breath. Morning sunlight slanted weakly through the blinds of Unit 2B, painting pale stripes across the cluttered carpet. The air smelled faintly of reheated soup and laundry detergent. Sarah Wilson paced the small kitchen, wringing her hands, her eyes hollow from a night of half-sleep. Anna sat at the table, her purple backpack still slung over her chair, as if she feared letting it out of reach. She toyed with a crust of toast but didn't eat. Miss Rebecca Morgan had returned early, unable to stay away. She perched beside Anna, reading softly from the child's worn storybook, while Officer Carter spoke quietly with the relief officer at the door. At 9 o'clock, a knock came. "That'll be Dr. Chen," Carter said. Sarah froze, then forced herself to open the door. A woman in her late 30s entered, dressed neatly but casually. A leather bag over her shoulder, her voice carried calm authority. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Lisa Chen. I'm here to meet Anna and talk a little." She smiled warmly at the girl, crouching low. "Hi, Anna. I like your backpack. Purple's my favorite color." Anna studied her with wary eyes but gave the faintest nod. Dr. Chen set her bag down and glanced at Carter and Rebecca. "If I may, I'd like to speak with her privately for a few minutes. But perhaps Miss Morgan could stay nearby, just within reach." "Familiar presence helps," Sarah tensed. "You mean, without me?" Dr. Chen's eyes softened. Sometimes children speak more freely without a parent present. It doesn't mean blame, it means safety. Sarah swallowed hard but nodded. She stepped back, clutching her hospital badge like a talisman. Dr. Chen led Anna to the small bedroom. Rebecca followed and sat quietly by the dresser, silent reassurance. The nightlight projector still glowed faint stars across the ceiling, even though it was day. Anna climbed onto her bed, hugging her stuffed bunny. Dr. Chen settled into the desk chair, keeping her posture relaxed. "Anna, do you like to draw?" she asked. The girl nodded. "Doctor." Chen pulled a sketch pad and colored pencils from her bag, setting them on the blanket. "Would you draw something for me? Maybe what it feels like when you're safe." For a moment, Anna stared at the blank page. Then she picked a yellow pencil and slowly sketched a circle, the sun. Beside it, she added a stick figure of a woman holding a child's hand. She hesitated, then whispered, "That's me and Miss Morgan." Rebecca's throat tightened at the words. "Doctor," Chen smiled gently, "beautiful, and now could you draw what it feels like when you're not safe?" Anna's hand hovered, then chose a black pencil. Her strokes came frantic, jagged. She drew a rectangle door, a tall figure looming in the frame, his face twisted in rage. In the corner she drew herself, knees tucked, words scrawled in heavy letters, "Don't hurt me anymore." Dr. Chen kept her voice steady. "That's very brave, Anna. Thank you. Can you tell me this man? Is he someone you know?" Anna's lip trembled. She whispered, "He comes when Mommy's gone. He tells me to be quiet. He grabs my arm." She touched her collarbone absent-mindedly, where Rebecca had seen the bruise. Rebecca nearly gasped but forced herself to remain silent. Dr. Chen leaned forward gently. "Does he have a name, sweetheart?" Anna's eyes darted toward the window. "I can't say it. He said if I do, he'll hurt Miss Morgan too." Rebecca swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She wanted to reach for the child, but Dr. Chen raised a hand subtly, signaling patience. "Anna, thank you for sharing. You are very strong. No one is going to hurt Miss Morgan. No one is going to hurt you. That's why we're here." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. She whispered, "He says the shadows tell him things, that nobody will believe me." Dr. Chen nodded, her voice calm. "Sometimes people who hurt others try to scare them into silence. But you did the bravest thing you told." Anna sniffled, lowering her head. Dr. Chen gently handed her a tissue. Then she looked at Rebecca. "I have enough to recommend protective custody protocols and trauma therapy immediately. These drawings and disclosures are significant." Rebecca nodded, relief and dread mingling in her chest. When they returned to the living room, Sarah rose anxiously. "Well, what did she say?" Dr. Chen's tone was professional, firm but not cruel. "Your daughter has described an adult male entering when you are away, physically hurting her and threatening silence. She has corroborated this with her artwork and with visible injuries. This requires immediate intervention." Sarah's face drained of color. No. She's just..." But her voice faltered as she looked at her daughter, who clutched the sketch pad like a shield. Anna whispered, "Mommy, please believe me." That plea pierced through the mother's wall of denial. Tears sprang to her eyes. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. Oh my God, Anna." She reached for her daughter, and Anna climbed cautiously into her lap. Carter cleared his throat. "Mrs. Wilson, tonight Anna will not be left alone under any circumstances. We will also be interviewing neighbors and checking building access logs. Do you know of anyone who might have had a key? Or who lingers around the stairwells at night?" Sarah shook her head quickly, distraught. "Only Miss Greta, my neighbor. She watches Anna sometimes. But she's old. She couldn't." She broke off, sobbing. "I didn't know. I thought she was just afraid of the dark." Rebecca knelt beside them. "You're not alone anymore. We're all here to help." Dr. Chen added, "Anna will begin therapy sessions immediately. She has a chance to heal, but it depends on safety being secured." Carter's radio crackled. He stepped aside, listening, then returned grim. There was a report last week of a loiterer seen near this complex, a man described as mid-30s, tall, pale jacket. Residents thought he was casing cars. Could be connected. Sarah hugged Anna tighter, her whole body trembling. If he comes back, Carter cut in firmly. He won't. Patrols are already circling. And if he does, he'll find law waiting, not a child alone. The room held its breath. Anna clutched her bunny and whispered into her mother's shoulder, "Promise you'll stay tonight." Sarah kissed her hair. "I promise, baby. I won't leave you again." Rebecca looked at the child's small face pressed against her mother's chest and thought of the vow she herself had made, to never ignore a cry for help. Justice was moving slowly, like dawn pushing back the night, but it was moving, and for the first time, Anna seemed to believe it. Dusk fell heavy over Maple Grove Apartments, pulling long shadows across the cracked pavement and the broken swing set in the courtyard. Officer James Carter arrived just after sunset, his unmarked sedan sliding into the space beneath a flickering streetlight. He killed the engine, sat for a moment, and scanned the complex. Too quiet. Curtains twitched in a few windows, but otherwise the place seemed to be holding its breath. He stepped out, adjusted his jacket, and moved toward Unit 2B with the kind of deliberate calm that spoke louder than any siren. Inside, Sarah Wilson busied herself in the kitchen, ladling soup into bowls with hands that shook despite her effort to appear steady. Anna sat at the small table, her purple backpack hooked around the chair leg, her stuffed bunny propped beside her like a sentinel. Miss Rebecca Morgan had come straight from school, unwilling to leave her student to face another night without allies. She sat across from Anna, coaxing her into small bites of bread and broth. "That's good, sweetheart," she said softly. "You need strength." Anna nodded but kept glancing at the window. The star projector had been set up early, scattering faint constellations across the ceiling though the sun hadn't fully disappeared. The light seemed to give her just enough courage to sit still. Carter knocked once and entered. His presence filled the cramped space. "Evening," he said simply. "We'll do this right. No surprises." He placed a duffel on the floor, pulling out a portable radio and a heavy-duty flashlight. He tested the window locks, the chain on the door, and checked the hallway. "Patrol will pass every 30 minutes. I'll stay here until midnight, then Officer Daniels takes over." Sarah nodded quickly, clutching her badge as though it could still anchor her. "Thank you," she murmured. I can't believe this is happening in my home." Carter gave her a level look. "It's happening because someone thought no one was watching. Tonight, they'll learn different." After dinner, the apartment settled into an uneasy rhythm. Sarah folded laundry to keep her hands busy. Rebecca helped Anna draw constellations to match the starlights. Carter sat near the door, his eyes fixed on the window's shifting shadows. By 9 o'clock, the building's usual noises faded. Televisions turned low, pipes groaned once, then silence. That was when Anna stiffened. She looked up from her drawing, her pencil frozen mid-line. "He's here," she whispered. Rebecca leaned close. "What do you see, Anna?" The girl's finger pointed to the window. A silhouette stretched across the curtain, broad-shouldered, unmoving. Carter was on his feet instantly. He snapped off the lamp, leaving only the projector stars flickering faint blue. He gestured sharply for silence, then crept toward the glass. Rebecca pulled Anna close, covering the child's eyes with her palm. The silhouette shifted, a hand pressing flat against the glass from outside. For one long heartbeat, 5 splayed fingers were visible through the thin curtain. Sarah gasped, dropping the basket of laundry, socks spilling across the carpet. Carter yanked the curtain aside. The window was locked, but beyond it, on the fire escape landing, a man stood frozen in the beam of Carter's flashlight. Tall, pale jacket, face partially obscured by a hood. For half a second his eyes gleamed like an animal caught in the light. Then he bolted. "Police! Stop!" Carter roared, unlocking the window and swinging it open, but the man had already scrambled down the metal stairs 2 at a time. Carter dashed into the hall, sprinted down the stairwell, boots pounding the metal steps, but by the time he hit the courtyard, the figure had vanished into the dark beyond the chain-link fence. Breath steaming, Carter scanned, radio at his mouth. Suspect sighted, male, mid-30s, pale jacket, fled eastbound from Maple Grove Apartments, initiate perimeter. Patrol units crackled acknowledgement. Back upstairs, Rebecca held Anna tightly. The child's entire body trembled, her face buried against her teacher's shoulder. Sarah stood near the window, her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "He was real," she whispered hoarsely. "God forgive me, he was real." Carter returned minutes later, face grim. "He's gone for now, but he's bold enough to come to the window while we're inside." He set his jaw. That means he's desperate, or he thinks she still belongs to him. Rebecca's heart lurched at the phrasing. She rubbed Anna's back, whispering, "You're safe. He can't have you." Carter crouched before them. "Anna, you were very brave. Can you tell me, was that the man you've seen before?" Anna lifted her tear-streaked face and nodded slowly. "He said he'd come back. He said he'd take me if I told." Carter placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Not anymore. He showed himself tonight. And that was his mistake. Now we know who we're hunting." Sarah sank into a chair, sobbing openly. "I let her sit here every night while I worked. I didn't know. I didn't know." Rebecca moved to her, gripping her hand. "What matters is you know now, and you're here." Carter rose, his voice iron. "We'll get him. But for now, no one leaves this apartment until daylight. Patrols are doubled. I'll stay all night." He looked to Rebecca. "If you can stay too, it might help her sleep." Rebecca nodded without hesitation. Hours passed slowly. Anna finally drifted into uneasy slumber between her mother and her teacher, the star projector casting gentle light. But every creak outside, every gust of wind against the window, kept Sarah and Rebecca wide awake. Carter sat sentinel in the armchair, his flashlight resting on his lap, eyes never leaving the door. At 3 a.m., patrol radioed. "No sighting. Perimeter secure." Carter allowed himself a breath, but not relaxation. "He'll try again," he murmured to Rebecca, too low for Sarah to hear. "Men like that don't walk away after exposure. He'll push harder, but now he's on record. We'll put his face on every watch list." Rebecca nodded, glancing at Anna's small sleeping form. She whispered back, "Then we'll push harder too." As dawn crept gray over Maple Grove, the apartment's silence felt different. Not safe, not yet, but steadier. The shadows had been named, chased, and forced into the open, and for the first time, Rebecca believed that the fragile thread of justice might just hold. When Anna stirred awake, blinking at the light, Carter leaned forward, his voice steady. "You made it through the night. You're stronger than the shadows." Anna's lips curved faintly, the beginning of a smile. It was small, but in that moment, it was victory. The morning after the fire escape encounter dawned clear and cold, as though the world itself had reset. But inside Maple Grove Apartments, the atmosphere remained taut, every sound magnified. Officer James Carter lingered by the door with his notepad, while Sarah Wilson brewed a pot of weak coffee with trembling hands. Miss Rebecca Morgan helped Anna dress for school, though it was clear the child would not be attending today. Anna sat silently on the couch, her purple backpack hugged to her chest as if it alone could guarantee safety. Carter closed his notebook with a snap. "We start interviews today," he said. "Neighbors, staff, anyone who's been around this building at night." His eyes flicked to Sarah. "Is there a manager on site?" Sarah nodded quickly. "Mr. Lopez. He's usually in his office near the laundry room. He's worked here for years." Her voice carried guilt beneath every word. She poured coffee into a chipped mug and handed it to Carter with both hands, as though the small offering could somehow repair the fractures of the night before. He'd know if strangers were hanging around. Carter accepted it but did not sip. "We'll talk to him." He turned to Rebecca. "Would you stay with Anna for the morning while I canvass?" Rebecca nodded without hesitation. She was already seated beside the girl, reading quietly from one of the battered library books she had pulled from her satchel. Anna leaned against her, head pressed to her teacher's arm. Carter watched them for a moment, a faint respect passing through his eyes. "Good," he said simply, then adjusted his jacket and stepped into the hallway. The corridor smelled faintly of mildew. Carter moved deliberately, knocking at doors, badge in hand. Most residents were reluctant, peeking through chains before speaking. "Have you noticed anyone unusual?" he asked repeatedly. The answers varied. A vague recollection of footsteps late at night, a muttered complaint about kids making noise, one woman swearing she'd seen a tall guy in a light jacket, smoking by the dumpsters 2 weeks back. Each detail built a picture, jagged and incomplete. Finally, Carter reached the small office by the laundry room. A thin man in his 50s sat behind the counter, sipping tea from a thermos. "Officer Carter?" he said nervously, rising halfway. "I heard you were here last night. Trouble with a tenant?" His accent lilted with Spanish undertones. Carter shook his head. "Not with a tenant. With an intruder. We need to know if anyone has been accessing the fire escapes or loitering near Unit 2B. Lopez frowned deeply. "I patrol sometimes. But this building, we don't have cameras. Not working ones. Too expensive. But yes, there's been a man. Tall, pale jacket. Like you say. I chased him once from the stairwell. He didn't live here. Moved too quick." His brows knitted. "I thought maybe he was looking to break into cars. But if he's bothering residents, he's been targeting a child," Carter said bluntly. The manager paled. "If you see him again, call immediately. Meanwhile, I need a list of anyone with keys. Maintenance staff, former tenants, anyone who might still have access." Lopez rifled through a drawer, pulling out a folder of contracts. "Only me and Miguel, the night janitor, and," he hesitated, "there was a tenant, Harold Phelps, who left 6 months ago. He caused trouble. I thought I collected all keys, but he was slippery." Carter's pen stilled on the page. "Describe him." Lopez shrugged. "Tall, mid-30s. Wore a pale windbreaker most days." The description slid cold through Carter's veins. He closed his notebook slowly. "I'll need his last known address." Lopez scribbled it down with shaking hands. By midday, Carter returned to Unit 2B, his face grim. Rebecca rose immediately from the couch. "What did you find?" Carter set his notes on the table. "Possible suspect. Former tenant, mid-30s. Fits description. Known troublemaker. Left abruptly half a year ago. If he kept a key, he'd know the building." Sarah pressed her hand over her mouth. "Oh God, he could just walk in?" Carter nodded once. "We'll run him through databases. For now, extra patrols stay in place." Anna stirred at the sound of their voices. She looked up, eyes wide. "Was it Harold?" she asked softly. The adults froze. Carter crouched near her. "Do you know that name, Anna?" She nodded faintly, whispering, "I heard him once. He said his name when he told me to be quiet. He said, 'Harold's here now.'" The words dropped like stones into the silence. Rebecca's chest constricted. Sarah gasped. She remembered his name all this time. Her voice broke. She reached for her daughter, but Anna recoiled slightly, retreating into her backpack. "I didn't say it before. He said if I told, he'd come for Miss Morgan." Her eyes filled with tears. Rebecca quickly leaned close, stroking her hair. "Sweetheart, you did the bravest thing, and you didn't put me in danger. You helped protect us all." Anna clung to her, sobbing quietly into her sleeve. Carter rose, his expression hard. "That confirms it. We'll issue an alert for Harold Phelps immediately. With a name we can track." He spoke into his radio, relaying the new detail, his voice crisp with authority. The response crackled back. "Warrant request underway. Units notified." The rest of the afternoon passed in tense quiet. Sarah sat at the table, her face buried in her hands. "I never saw him, not once. I was working, and my baby was alone." Her words dissolved into sobs. Rebecca touched her shoulder. "You can't change yesterday. You can fight for today. That's what matters." Carter checked his watch. "Tonight we'll station a car outside permanently. If he tries again, he won't make it off the block." Anna finally lifted her head. "What if he's already inside?" she whispered. Rebecca hugged her close, answering with steady conviction. "Then he'll face more than just shadows. He'll face all of us." Carter's jaw tightened, but a flicker of admiration passed his eyes. The teacher, the mother, The frightened child, they were no longer isolated. They were a line, and he would stand with them. As evening approached again, the apartment filled with the hum of solidarity. The patrol car parked visibly outside. Neighbors, once wary, dropped off small gestures: a casserole dish, a flashlight, a set of spare batteries. Each item was simple, but together they signaled something profound: that the community, too, had drawn a line in the sand. Harold Phelps had haunted the stairwells, but now he was hunted, and Anna, for the first time, dared to believe that maybe the night could be held at bay. Night descended on Maple Grove Apartments with an eerie stillness. Patrol cars had come and gone all afternoon, neighbors whispering in the hallways, but now the building sat heavy with expectation. The pale glow of the streetlight outside Unit 2B bled through the blinds, and inside, tension pulsed in every breath. Officer James Carter stood near the table, radio in hand, reviewing the plan once more. Units on perimeter, east and west alleys covered. Back up stage 2 blocks out, he said quietly into the mic. A voice confirmed, crackling with static. He turned to Sarah and Miss Rebecca Morgan. Tonight we're not just watching, we're setting bait. If Harold Phelps comes back, he won't walk away. Sarah's face drained of color. You mean, you want him to come here? Her voice shook with disbelief. Carter's jaw set firm. He's bold, Mrs. Wilson. He thinks this place still belongs to him. Last night proved it. He came right to the window even with us inside. That tells me he won't quit. If we sit here paralyzed, he controls the ground. If we lure him, we control it. Sarah pressed her palms to her face, whispering, "My God." Rebecca reached for her hand. "Sarah, listen, he's coming anyway. Better tonight when Carter's waiting than some night when Anna's alone." At the mention of her name, Anna stirred on the couch. She had been drawing again in her notebook, small, nervous strokes of pencil shading in the outlines of her star projector constellations. She looked up, her voice quiet. "He'll know, he always knows." Carter crouched down, steady eyes on hers. "That's why we want him to come. Because this time, we'll be ready. You don't have to fight him. That's my job. Your job is to stay safe with your mom and Miss Morgan." Anna studied him for a long moment, then whispered, "Promise he won't take me?" Carter didn't blink. "I promise." They set the stage carefully. Lights in the living room dimmed but not off, enough to give the illusion of routine. Curtains left slightly parted. A bated view of the small family inside. Rebecca sat beside Anna, reading aloud softly, while Sarah moved about in the kitchen pretending to tidy. Carter remained near the door, radio pressed to his ear, every muscle taut. Outside, officers stationed themselves in stairwells and cars, eyes trained on entrances. The trap was set. The hours crept past. 10 o'clock, 11, midnight. The building's usual noises hushed into uneasy silence, every creak in the walls magnified. Anna leaned against her teacher, her eyelids heavy but fighting sleep. Rebecca stroked her hair, whispering comfort, but her own chest tightened with every tick of the clock. Sarah sat rigid in a chair, eyes darting to the window each time shadows shifted. Then, just after 1, a sound, the faint groan of metal from the fire escape. Carter's head snapped up, finger pressed to his lips. Anna froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, the shadow of a figure appeared against the curtain, tall, broad-shouldered, hood drawn low. A pale jacket gleamed faintly in the streetlight. The hand pressed to the glass, fingers splayed exactly as before. Sarah gasped but bit it back, clapping a hand over her mouth. Carter whispered into his radio, "Suspect on fire escape, Unit 2B. Hold positions. Do not engage until signal." Static crackled back, officers acknowledging. The man lingered, peering inside, his breath fogging the glass. Rebecca clutched Anna tighter, whispering against her hair, "He can't reach you. You're safe." Anna trembled, clutching her backpack to her chest. For a moment it seemed Harold sensed something amiss. He shifted, testing the window latch. Carter let the silence stretch, then gave a sharp nod. Now, floodlights snapped on outside, blazing across the building. The shadow froze, then bolted, scrambling down the metal steps. Officers burst from both ends of the alley, shouting commands. "Police, stop where you are." Harold leapt the final steps, hitting the pavement hard. He sprinted toward the fence, desperate. Carter was already through the door, pounding down the stairwell, his voice booming through the night. "Phelps, down now." The suspect reached the fence, scrambling, hands clawing for purchase. A spotlight caught his face pale, sharp features twisted with fury, eyes wild. For the first time, Anna's whispered nightmare had a flesh and blood match. 2 officers closed in from either side. Harold lashed out, swinging a length of pipe he had hidden in his sleeve. 1 officer stumbled, but Carter charged, tackling Harold to the ground. The struggle was brutal, grunts and metal clanging against concrete. Carter pinned his arm, wrestled the pipe free, and snapped handcuffs around his wrists. "You're done," Carter growled, breath harsh. "You don't touch children again." From the window upstairs, Rebecca and Sarah held Anna close as the scene unfolded. The child's tears streamed freely. But there was something new in her face relief. She whispered, almost to herself, "He's real, and now they see him." Rebecca kissed her hair, whispering fiercely, "Yes, sweetheart, they see him, and he can't hide in the shadows anymore." Minutes later, Carter returned, sweat glistening on his brow but his eyes steady. He shut the door behind him, the sound echoing finality. "He's in custody," he announced. Sarah collapsed into a chair, sobbing with a mix of anguish and gratitude. "Thank God, thank God." Rebecca wiped her own tears, then turned to Anna. "Do you hear that, love? He's gone. He can't come back." Anna clutched her bunny, whispering, "But he said he has friends." Carter knelt, his voice like iron. "If anyone else tries, we'll be ready. You don't fight alone anymore. You've got me, you've got your mom, you've got your teacher, and now you've got the law. That's more powerful than any shadow." Anna blinked at him, then for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to smile. It was small, fragile, but it was real. The trap had worked. The shadow had a name, a face, and handcuffs on his wrists. Yet Carter knew this was not the end. Only the beginning of building Anna's world back from the fear that had ruled it. Still, as dawn crept over Maple Grove and painted the windows gold, a new certainty filled the room. Justice, long delayed, had stepped inside. And for Anna, the night no longer belonged to Harold Phelps. It belonged to her. The police station was buzzing long before sunrise. Officers filed reports, phones rang, and the hum of fluorescent lights filled the hallways. In an interrogation room on the 2nd floor, Harold Phelps sat slouched in a metal chair, his wrists cuffed to the table. His pale jacket had been seized, revealing a sweat-stained shirt clinging to his thin frame. His eyes darted to the mirror on the wall. Knowing well that it was not just glass but a window to watchers, he smirked, then leaned back, feigning ease, though his leg jittered with restless energy. Officer James Carter entered, file folder under his arm, his face carved in calm stone. He set the folder on the table, pulled up a chair, and sat down without a word. He let the silence stretch, his steady gaze fixed on Phelps. After nearly a minute, Harold chuckled. "What's the matter, officer? Cat got your tongue? You caught me loitering. Big deal." His tone dripped with mockery, but his eyes betrayed flickers of unease. Carter finally spoke, his voice steady, low. "We didn't catch you loitering, Harold. We caught you trying to get to a 6-year-old girl's bedroom window, again." He opened the folder, spreading photographs across the table. Drawings in crayon, Anna's scrawled words, "Don't hurt me anymore," pictures of bruises on her arm and collarbone, a shot from last night's spotlight catching Harold's furious face at the fire escape. Carter tapped the images one by one. "This is no coincidence." Harold's jaw clenched, but his smirk remained. "Kids lie. They dream up monsters. Maybe she dreamed up me." He leaned forward, his voice oily. "But she drew me handsome, didn't she? That's what they do when they like you. They draw you." Carter's hand slammed down on the table, rattling the cuffs. His voice cut like steel. "She drew you because you terrified her. Because you left bruises on her body. Because you whispered threats that no child should ever hear." He leaned closer, eyes blazing. "You are not a dream. You're a predator. and you've been caught." For the first time, Harold flinched. His eyes flicked toward the mirror, then back. "You can't prove anything." He spat. "So she's got a bruise. Kids bruise easy. So she's scared of shadows. You think a jury buys that?" He smirked again, though thinner this time. "I was just checking the place out. Maybe steal a television. That's it." Carter folded his arms. "Then explain this." He slid forward a recording device, pressing play. Anna's tiny voice filled the room, trembling from the night before. "He said his name was Harold. He told me to be quiet. He said if I told, he'd hurt Miss Morgan too." The words echoed against the walls. Harold's smirk crumbled. His foot stilled. He swallowed. "Smart kid," he muttered finally, his bravado cracking. "Smarter than most." His eyes hardened, dark with resentment. "But she shouldn't have talked. I told her what would happen if she did." Carter's chair screeched as he stood. He loomed over the man, fury tightly coiled under his control. "You don't threaten her anymore. You don't threaten anyone. Your voice, your face, your shadow, you're finished." He leaned close enough that Harold could see the fire in his eyes. "And you know what's worse? The people you thought wouldn't believe her, they do. Her teacher, her mother, the courts, the jury, they'll all believe her now." Harold's eyes narrowed. "You think you've won? There are always more shadows. You can't lock them all away." His tone was a hiss, meant to claw back control. But Carter didn't flinch. He gathered the photos, the recorder, and stood tall. "You're right about one thing," he said evenly. "There are more shadows. That's why people like me spend our lives carrying the light." He left Harold in silence, the cuffs clinking as the man fidgeted with impotent rage. Down the hall, in a quieter room, Dr. Lisa Chen sat with Anna and Rebecca. The psychologist's voice was soft, guiding the girl through gentle breathing exercises. "In through your nose, sweetheart. Out through your mouth, like blowing out birthday candles." Anna followed, her small chest rising and falling. Rebecca stroked her hair, whispering encouragement. Sarah sat nearby, pale but attentive, clinging to every word as though learning alongside her daughter. "Doctor," Chen pulled out the sketch pad again. "Anna, do you want to draw what you feel now that the man is gone?" Anna hesitated, then picked up a blue pencil. Slowly, she drew a figure of herself holding hands with two taller figures, a woman with long hair and a woman with glasses, Rebecca and her mother. Above them she drew stars, not shadows. She looked up shyly. "He's not here in this one." Rebecca blinked back tears. "That's beautiful, honey." Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by both grief and gratitude. Dr. Chen smiled gently. "That's progress. We'll build from here." Carter entered, his face calm but grave. "He's in custody. He'll face charges. But we'll need Anna to testify in some way, either through recorded statement or in court." Sarah gasped. "She's just a child. You can't." Carter lifted a hand gently. "No one will force her to face him directly, but her truth is powerful, and it's what will keep him locked away." He crouched before Anna. "Sweetheart, you've already done the hardest part. You told. That's what heroes do." Anna looked at him with wide eyes, then whispered, "Will the shadows come back?" Carter shook his head. "Not these. You turned the light on them, and once light shows the truth, shadows can't hide." Rebecca hugged the girl close. "You hear that? You're stronger than the dark." Anna nestled against her teacher, the faintest smile breaking through. That night, as the family returned to the apartment under protective escort, Rebecca lingered at the doorway. She looked back at the patrol cars outside, then at the child now holding both her mother's hands. Anna's eyes no longer darted to the shadows but stayed fixed on the people beside her. For the first time, Rebecca believed the little girl might sleep without fear. And in the interrogation room across town, Harold Phelps sat alone, his smirk gone, his face pale. The shadows he had used as weapons had turned against him. Justice had begun to write its answer, and it was louder than his threats. The courthouse loomed tall and sterile against the skyline, its marble steps reflecting the sharp light of late morning. From the outside, it looked like every other building of law. Impersonal, imposing, unyielding. Inside, though, the halls hummed with hushed urgency, clerks shuffling papers, lawyers clutching files, voices bouncing against high ceilings. For Sarah Wilson, each echo carried a reminder of how close she had come to losing her daughter in the silence of denial. For Anna, it was another world entirely, one she would now have to step into, even if only from the safety of a side room. Officer James Carter met them at the courthouse entrance, his steady presence like an anchor in the swirl of activity. "It won't be easy," he said quietly as they passed through security. "But you won't face it alone. Every step of the way. I'll be here. Dr. Chen will be here. And Miss Morgan will be right at your side." Anna clutched her purple backpack tighter, nodding faintly. Her stuffed bunny peeked out, its worn ear dangling like a talisman. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair with trembling fingers. "She shouldn't have to do this," she whispered. Carter's gaze was firm. "She shouldn't. But she will only do what she feels able to. Remember, there are options. Recorded testimony. Closed session. She won't stand in front of him if she can't. But her voice, her truth, is what keeps him behind bars." They were led into a small conference room adjoining the courtroom. Dr. Lisa Chen was already there, laying out crayons and paper on the table. "Anna," she said warmly, "this is your space today. If you need a break, if you need to draw, you can. Nothing happens until you say you're ready." Anna's shoulders eased slightly. Rebecca Morgan sat beside her student, opening a storybook, whispering that they could read in between if Anna wanted. Sarah stood behind them both, torn between shame and fierce protection, her eyes red from restless nights. The district attorney entered, a tall woman in her 40s, named Angela Ruiz. She wore a charcoal suit, her presence sharp, but not unfriendly. She sat opposite Anna, lowering her voice to a gentle register. "Hi, Anna. I know this is scary. My job is to make sure the man who hurt you can't hurt you again. I'll ask you some questions today, and you can answer however you want. If you don't know, it's okay to say, 'I don't know.' If you need a break, we'll stop." She slid a small laminated card across the table. It read "Stop" in big red letters. "Anytime you hold this up, we pause. You're in charge." Anna touched the card tentatively, then held it in her lap like a shield. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Anna, do you remember when you told me about the shadows, and then you drew the stars instead? That was your way of turning fear into strength. Think of today as another drawing. You're showing the court what really happened so they can see too." Anna glanced at Rebecca, who nodded with encouragement. "You don't have to fight the shadows alone anymore," her teacher reminded her softly. "We're all right here." As they spoke, Sarah's guilt spilled over. "I don't know if I can face this," she whispered to Carter at the back of the room. "Every word out of her mouth is proof I wasn't there for her, that I left her to fend for herself." Carter's response was quiet but firm. "You can't rewrite the nights you missed, but you can be the mother who stands beside her now. Guilt won't help her testify. Strength will." Sarah wiped her eyes and nodded, clinging to the truth in his words. When the session began, Angela Ruiz asked questions in careful tones. "Anna, do you remember the man you saw at your window?" Anna's small voice replied, "Yes. Can you tell me what he said to you?" Anna looked down, her hand tightening around the stop card. Rebecca squeezed her hand lightly, and Dr. Chen nodded. Anna swallowed and whispered, "He said my name. He told me to be quiet. He said if I told, he'd hurt me and Miss Morgan." Her words were thin but carried weight, the kind that filled the air heavier than any shout. Angela nodded solemnly. "And did he ever touch you?" Anna's hand moved slowly to her collarbone, the faint memory of bruises there. She nodded. "He grabbed me. Hard. It hurt." Sarah's breath caught audibly, but she stifled her sob with her hand. Carter glanced at her sharply, signaling silence, and she obeyed, trembling. Angela continued, careful not to press too far. "Thank you, Anna. That was very brave. We'll make sure everyone knows what you've said. You've helped more than you know." After the mock session, Dr. Chen praised her. You did wonderfully. You spoke the truth. And that's enough. Anna leaned against Rebecca, exhausted but proud. Was I brave? She asked quietly. Rebecca kissed her forehead. The bravest, Carter added. Heroes aren't the ones who fight without fear. They're the ones who speak even when they're afraid. That's you. Later, as they left the courthouse, the sun broke through clouds, casting sharp beams of light across the marble steps. Sarah carried Anna in her arms, whispering apologies and promises into her hair. Rebecca walked beside them, her own chest heavy with gratitude that the girl had found her voice. Carter lingered behind, speaking briefly with Angela Ruiz. How strong is the case? He asked. Ruiz adjusted her files. With her testimony, the physical evidence, and the attempted break-in, it's solid. But defense will be ruthless. They'll claim imagination, dreams, confusion. Carter's jaw hardened. They'll fail. This girl's truth is stronger than any lie. That night, back at the apartment, Anna placed the laminated stop card on her nightstand, beside her star projector. Can I keep it? She asked Dr. Chen, who smiled. Of course, it means you always have the power to say stop. In court, in life, no one gets to silence you again. Anna switched on the projector, filling her ceiling with constellations. For the first time, she reached to turn off the lamp herself. I'm not afraid of the dark tonight, she whispered. Sarah kissed her cheek. Rebecca smoothed her blanket, and Carter stood at the doorway, watching. In that small room filled with stars, the shadows no longer ruled. A child had spoken, and her words had begun to reshape the night. The courthouse brimmed with tension as the trial of Harold Phelps opened. Reporters lingered on the steps outside, their cameras flashing, their questions bouncing off stone walls. For Oakwood, a small community unaccustomed to scandal of this magnitude, the case had become a symbol of shadows exposed, of voices long silenced finally being heard. Inside, the courtroom carried the hush of gravity. Wood benches filled with townspeople, teachers, neighbors, all drawn by the story of a little girl who dared to speak. Harold Phelps entered under guard, shackles removed before he sat at the defense table. He wore a wrinkled suit provided by the county, his face unshaven, his smirk thin but present. He glanced at the gallery with a predator's calculation, but when his eyes shifted toward the victim's family table, they found Carter's hard stare waiting, unflinching. Harold's smirk faltered. Anna was not in the main courtroom for opening statements. At just 6 years old, her presence would be too much. Instead, she sat in a side room with Dr. Lisa Chen and Rebecca Morgan, the proceedings broadcast on a monitor muted of her abuser's voice. Sarah sat beside her, wringing a tissue in her hands, whispering prayers under her breath. He won't win, she told her daughter. Not this time. The judge, a stern woman named Margaret Ellis, called the court to order. The prosecution rose first. Angela Ruiz addressed the jury, her voice measured but infused with quiet fire. This case is about a child robbed of safety in her own home. It is about a predator who stalked and terrified a little girl, leaving bruises on her body and scars in her spirit. It is about a community that finally chose to listen, and the courage of one 6-year-old who dared to tell the truth when silence nearly destroyed her. At the end of this trial, the evidence will show Harold Phelps guilty of child endangerment, assault, and attempted unlawful entry. Her eyes swept the jury, her voice unwavering. Anna Wilson is not a liar. She is a survivor. The defense attorney, a wiry man named Thomas Kincaid, rose with a slick smile. His words dripped skepticism. Ladies and gentlemen, children have active imaginations. They dream of monsters under the bed, shadows at the window. Sometimes those dreams are colored by television, by stories, by fear of the dark. What the prosecution calls evidence are drawings, scribbles of a child. What they call testimony is the confused memory of a 6-year-old. My client is guilty of one thing: being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We ask you to remember that in America, a man is innocent until proven guilty. The first witnesses laid the groundwork. Neighbors testified to seeing a tall man in a pale jacket lurking around the building at night. The building manager confirmed Harold Phelps once lived there and may have kept a key. Officers recounted the chase from the fire escape and his violent resistance with a hidden pipe, each piece layered upon the last, the jury's eyes narrowing as the picture sharpened. When it came time for Anna's testimony, the courtroom shifted. The judge ordered a closed session for that portion, minimizing the audience to essential parties. Anna entered through a side door, holding her mother's hand, her bunny tucked in the crook of her arm. Rebecca followed close behind. Carter stood near the back. His presence, a wall of assurance. The little girl climbed into the witness chair, her feet dangling far from the ground. The judge smiled kindly. "Anna, do you know why you're here?" Anna's voice was soft. "To tell the truth." "That's right," the judge said warmly. "All we ask is that you tell the truth." Angela Ruiz began gently. "Anna, can you tell us what you remember about the nights when you were afraid?" Anna hesitated, looking at Rebecca. Her teacher gave her a steady nod. The child drew a breath. "He came when Mommy was gone. He stood by the window. He said my name. He told me to be quiet. He grabbed me once." She touched her collarbone unconsciously. The bruise long faded but not forgotten. "He said if I told, he'd hurt me and Miss Morgan." The jury leaned forward, faces etched with sorrow. Angela asked softly, "Do you see that man in this courtroom today?" Anna pointed, her small hand trembling. "That's him, Harold." Her voice cracked, but she did not look away. For a moment, Harold's mask of arrogance slipped. His eyes darkened, his smirk gone. The defense attorney shifted uncomfortably. Kincaid approached for cross-examination. His tone was falsely sweet. "Anna, you like to draw, don't you?" She nodded cautiously. "Sometimes you draw things from your imagination, like stars, right?" "Yes. And sometimes, when you're scared, you draw shadows. But that doesn't mean the shadows are real, does it?" He smiled, trying to plant doubt. Anna looked at him, her voice quiet, but firm. "Shadows can be scary. But Harold wasn't a shadow. He was real. He hurt me." Her simple words cut through the attorney's tactic like a blade. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Ellis rapped her gavel once, silencing the gallery. Rebecca's eyes brimmed with tears. Carter folded his arms, pride swelling in his chest. Sarah wept silently, her daughter's courage washing over her guilt like fire. Even Angela Ruiz paused a moment before continuing. "No further questions, Your Honor," she said, her voice thick with conviction. When Anna was excused, the judge thanked her personally. "You've been very brave today, Anna. You've helped us all see the truth." The child smiled faintly, clutching her bunny, as Rebecca escorted her from the stand. Back in the side room, Anna climbed into her mother's lap. "Did I do good?" she whispered. Sarah kissed her hair fiercely. "You did more than good. You showed everyone who he really is," Rebecca added, voice trembling with pride. "You lit the dark, sweetheart. That's more powerful than any monster." In the courtroom, Harold Phelps sat shackled by truth as much as by law. His defense attorney shuffled papers with visible frustration, his strategies unraveling. The jury had seen the child, heard her words, felt her courage. The shadows had lost their grip. As the day closed, Carter stepped outside the courthouse into the golden light of evening. Reporters swarmed, but he ignored them, his eyes on the horizon. Justice was not yet complete, the verdict still awaited, but for the first time, he felt certainty that the outcome was inevitable. He whispered to himself, "The shadows don't win. Not this time." And back at the apartment that night, under the glow of her star projector, Anna whispered to her bunny, "I told, and he couldn't stop me." Then, for the first time in months, she drifted into sleep without fear. The courthouse was hushed in a way that felt heavier than the trial days before. The air was thick with anticipation as the jury filed into the deliberation chamber, the heavy wooden door closing behind them with a resonant thud. Hours stretched slowly into a day, and still the community lingered in the corridors, unwilling to leave until the verdict was known. For Sarah Wilson, every minute felt like a lifetime. She sat on a bench outside the courtroom, Anna's small hand clasped in hers, knuckles white. Rebecca Morgan sat close beside them, murmuring reassurances, while Officer James Carter stood near the window, arms folded, eyes scanning the crowd as if still guarding against unseen threats. Anna, too young to fully grasp the rituals of justice, clutched her stuffed bunny with solemn focus. She looked up at her mother. "Is it over yet?" Sarah bent low, whispering, "Almost. Baby, they're deciding now." Dr. Lisa Chen, who had been with them since morning, smiled gently. "Anna, remember the stars you drew after you told the truth? Think of today like that. You already shone your light. Now it's the jury's turn to follow it." The girl nodded, her small brow furrowed, trying to imagine the stars inside a room full of strangers. By mid-afternoon, the bell rang. "Jury has reached a verdict," the bailiff announced, his voice echoing down the marble halls. The crowd surged forward, reporters jostling for position, whispers buzzing like electricity. Carter moved instantly, shielding the family with his broad frame, ushering them back into the courtroom. Inside, the air was taut, the benches packed with townspeople. Harold Phelps was brought in, his shackled hands freed for appearance's sake. His face pale but eyes defiant. He avoided Anna's gaze, though for a moment his lips twitched in a ghost of the smirk that had once terrorized her. Judge Ellis entered, her gavel striking once. "Court is now in session. Jury, have you reached a verdict?" The foreman, a middle-aged woman with resolute eyes, stood. "We have, Your Honor." The paper was handed to the bailiff, then to the judge, who read silently before nodding. She returned it to the foreman. "Please state your verdict." The room held its breath. "In the matter of the state versus Harold Phelps, on the charge of child endangerment, guilty. On the charge of assault of a minor, guilty. On the charge of attempted unlawful entry, guilty." Each word landed like a hammer. The gallery erupted in a collective exhale, a wave of whispers and tears. Sarah clutched Anna to her chest, sobbing openly. Rebecca pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming. Carter allowed himself a single nod, jaw tight, but eyes softening with relief. Harold's face twisted, his mask of arrogance shattering. He spat something under his breath, but the gavel cracked sharply. "Order," Judge Ellis barked. She fixed her gaze on him. "Mr. Phelps, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will follow. Until then, you are remanded into custody." The bailiff stepped forward, cuffs snapping back around his wrists. For the first time, Harold looked small, his bravado stripped, his shadow power gone. Anna peeked from her mother's embrace, her eyes wide but steady. She whispered, "He can't hurt us now?" Rebecca knelt to meet her gaze. "No, sweetheart, he can't." Carter added, his voice firm as stone, "He'll never come near you again. That's a promise backed by law." When the judge dismissed the court, people flooded the aisles, some reaching to squeeze Sarah's hand, others nodding with tearful respect toward Rebecca and Anna. The small family was shepherded out swiftly, Carter carving a protective path through the crowd. Reporters shouted questions. How does it feel to have justice? What's next for Anna? But Carter shut them down with a glare that needed no words. Outside, the sunlight was brilliant, almost blinding after the dim courtroom. Sarah stood on the steps, holding Anna's hand high like a lifeline. "We're free, baby," she whispered. Rebecca stood on the other side, her hand resting gently on Anna's back. "You showed them the truth, and they believed you." The child looked between the two women who had carried her through the storm, then turned her face upward to the sky. "The stars are still there, even in the day," she said softly, as if realizing it for the first time. That night, back in Unit 2B, the apartment felt different. The locks were the same, the furniture still worn, but the air carried a lightness, a freedom. Neighbors knocked softly on the door, leaving casseroles, toys, and cards. The community that once whispered now stood openly in solidarity. Carter stopped by, setting down a stuffed bear on the counter. "For the brave one," he said, his voice thick with affection. Anna hugged the bear instantly, smiling wider than she had in months. Dr. Chen visited briefly, checking on Anna. "The trial is over," she explained gently. But healing takes time. We'll keep drawing, keep talking, keep building light. Anna nodded, then proudly showed her the sketch she had made that evening. Herself, her mother, her teacher, and a tall figure with a badge. Carter standing beneath a sky full of stars, no shadows drawn. "That's us," she said. "We're together." Sarah wept softly at the drawing, her guilt slowly melting into gratitude. "I almost lost you because I couldn't see. But you saved me too, Anna. You taught me to believe in the truth." Rebecca added quietly. "She taught all of us." Carter's eyes softened as he looked at the child curled in safety. A 6-year-old reminded us what courage looks like. As Anna drifted to sleep under her star projector, the hum of the neighborhood settling for the night, Rebecca whispered to Sarah, "This isn't just an ending. It's a beginning. She'll carry scars, but also strength, and she'll know that when she spoke, the world listened." Carter stepped quietly to the door, his silhouette framed by the hall light. "The shadows lost," he said, his voice low but sure. "And they'll keep losing, because now they've been named, and because she's not alone anymore." Sarah nodded, tears shining in her eyes. She glanced toward her sleeping daughter, her face serene beneath the glow of constellations, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. For the first time in what felt like forever, the night belonged not to fear but to peace. And as the stars flickered on the ceiling, Anna's soft breathing filled the room, a sound more powerful than any verdict. It was the sound of healing, of survival, of a childhood reclaimed. 2 weeks after the verdict, the courthouse once again filled with people. This time, it wasn't to decide guilt the jury had spoken. Today was about punishment, about closure, about the community bearing witness as justice was sealed. The air inside was taut, the weight of expectation pressing down on everyone seated in the gallery. Reporters scribbled notes, neighbors whispered, and the clock above the judge's bench ticked with merciless precision. Harold Phelps shuffled in, shackled this time, his pale jacket replaced by an orange jumpsuit. The smirk he had once worn as armor was gone, replaced by a hollow stare. He slouched in his chair, but his eyes still flickered with defiance, scanning the room as though daring someone to meet his gaze. When his eyes brushed across the victim's family table, he found Officer James Carter's unyielding stare, Sarah Wilson's trembling but resolute frame, Rebecca Morgan's steady calm, and little Anna sitting between them, clutching her stuffed bunny. For the first time, Harold looked away. Judge Ellis entered, her black robe flowing, gavel in hand. "We are here for sentencing in the matter of the state versus Harold Phelps. The defendant has been found guilty on all counts: child endangerment, assault of a minor, and attempted unlawful entry. Today, we will hear statements before this court determines final sentencing." Her voice carried authority sharpened by compassion. She gestured toward the prosecution. Angela Ruiz rose, her charcoal sweet crisp, her voice strong. "Your Honor, the damage inflicted by Harold Phelps cannot be measured in bruises alone. He invaded the sanctity of a child's home, her sense of safety, her innocence. He left scars on her body and her spirit. This community has rallied to protect her, but no child should have to rely on neighbors and teachers to save her from the very shadows outside her window. We ask for the maximum sentence allowable by law, not only to punish this man, but to ensure he never again stalks another child." She returned to her seat, eyes burning with conviction. The judge turned to the defense. Thomas Kincaid rose, his voice tired, his arguments thinner now. "Your Honor, my client maintains he never intended harm. He was a man adrift, without stability, and his actions, while misguided, were not predatory in intent. We ask the court to consider leniency, rehabilitation over retribution." The words rang hollow, even to himself. The gallery shifted with murmurs of disapproval. "Order," Judge Ellis said firmly, her gavel tapping once. "We will now hear from the victim's representatives." Sarah Wilson stood, her knees trembling, but she forced herself to speak. Her voice wavered but grew steadier as she went. "Your Honor, I was blind. I worked nights. I thought I was protecting my daughter by keeping a roof over her head. But while I was away, he was here, watching her, hurting her, and she was too scared to tell me because she thought no one would believe her. I failed her. But she found her voice. And when she spoke, she was stronger than me. Stronger than I ever thought a child could be. I asked this court to protect her where I could not, give him no chance to haunt her again. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she sat, Rebecca squeezing her hand tightly. Then Rebecca rose, the classroom teacher who had been transformed into a guardian. Her voice was clear, her eyes unwavering. Your Honor, I've spent my career teaching children to read, to draw, to imagine, but I never thought one of my students would teach me what courage really looks like. Anna's drawings weren't fantasy, they were testimony. They were her only way of crying for help. And when I saw those words, "Don't hurt me anymore," I realized my responsibility was more than teaching. It was protecting. She has changed all of us, but Harold Phelps tried to take her childhood. That cannot go unanswered. For Anna, and for every child who hides bruises under thin sleeves, I beg this court for the maximum sentence. Let this verdict echo beyond these walls. Predators have no refuge in shadows. The gallery stirred with soft applause before the gavel silenced it again. Finally, the court clerk asked gently, "Does the victim wish to speak?" Anna looked up, clutching her bunny. She whispered to Rebecca, who leaned close. "You don't have to if you don't want to," her teacher assured her, but Anna shook her head, then slid off her chair. With tiny steps, she approached the stand. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the 6-year-old climbed onto the stool, her small frame dwarfed by the wooden bench. She held her bunny in one hand, her voice faint but clear. "He told me to be quiet, but I'm not quiet now. I said the truth. He can't come back. I want him to stay away forever." Her words were simple, but they cut deeper than any lawyer's argument. Sarah sobbed openly. Rebecca pressed a hand to her chest. Carter's eyes glistened, though his expression remained composed. Even Judge Ellis's stern face softened. "Thank you, Anna," she said. "Your voice matters." When the statements concluded, the judge leaned forward, her tone grave. "Mr. Phelps, you preyed upon the most vulnerable among us. You used fear as a weapon, shadows as your shield. But you underestimated the strength of a child's truth. The jury has spoken, and now this court will as well." She lifted her gavel. "On the charge of child endangerment, I sentence you to 10 years. On the charge of assault of a minor, 20 years. On the charge of attempted unlawful entry, 5 years. These sentences shall run consecutively. You will serve 35 years in state prison. You will register as a violent offender, and you will never again have the opportunity to terrorize a child." The gavel struck with finality. The sound echoed through the chamber, reverberating like thunder. The gallery erupted in tears, whispers, and the release of long-held breath. Harold Phelps slumped in his chair, fury flashing in his eyes, but no smirk remained. Guards shackled him swiftly and led him away. For the first time, his power was gone, dismantled not just by law but by the voice of a little girl who refused to stay silent. Anna climbed back into her mother's arms, whispering, "It's over?" Sarah hugged her tight. "Yes, baby, it's over." Rebecca leaned close, whispering, "You did it. You changed everything." Carter approached, his voice low but resolute. "He's behind bars, Anna, and every time you look at the stars, remember you put him there." That night, back at their apartment, neighbors gathered in quiet celebration. A casserole on the counter, candles flickering, voices soft with relief. Anna drew another picture, this one brighter than any before. Herself, her mom, her teacher, Officer Carter, all standing beneath a sky full of stars, with the words written in crayon at the bottom. "No more shadows," Rebecca framed it, placing it on the wall above the couch. "A reminder," she said softly, and as Anna drifted to sleep under the glow of her star projector, her bunny tucked against her cheek, Sarah whispered a prayer of gratitude. For justice, for courage, for community. And in the quiet of the night, the shadows no longer held sway. The days following Harold Phelps's sentencing brought a strange quiet to Maple Grove Apartments. For the first time in months, Sarah Wilson no longer checked every window twice before bed. The heavy dread that had hung in every corner of Unit 2B seemed to lift, replaced by a cautious calm. Neighbors greeted them more warmly, often with soft touches to Sarah's arm or small gifts left for Anna at their door. What once was whispered pity had turned into open support, and though Sarah still wrestled with guilt, she began to sense the strength of community holding her up. Anna, meanwhile, was slowly rediscovering childhood. She still carried her purple backpack everywhere, and her stuffed bunny rarely left her side, but her drawings had changed. No longer jagged black shadows, but swirls of color, blue skies, yellow suns, and stars that filled every page. On the wall above the couch, Rebecca Morgan had hung the drawing Anna made on sentencing day, No More Shadows. Each time Sarah passed it, she touched the frame like a talisman, whispering a prayer of gratitude that her daughter had not only survived but had spoken her truth loudly enough to break through walls. One Friday afternoon, Rebecca visited after school, arms full of books. "I thought Anna might like some new stories," she said. Placing them on the table, Anna rushed forward, her eyes sparkling. "Can we read the one with the bear first?" Rebecca laughed. "Of course, but only if you promise to eat dinner first." Sarah smiled from the kitchen, stirring pasta sauce. "She'll do it," she said softly. Gratitude woven into her every word. "She listens to you like your family." Rebecca turned, meeting Sarah's eyes. "She is family now. You both are." Later that evening, Officer James Carter stopped by, dressed in plain clothes for once. He carried a grocery bag filled with fresh fruit and a small potted plant. "For the window," he explained awkwardly. "Figured some green might make this place feel lighter." Sarah accepted it with a shy smile. "Thank you, for everything. I still don't know how to repay what you've done." Carter shook his head. "You don't owe me. You and Anna already did the hardest part. You believed. You told the truth. That's what changed everything." Now, as they sat together, Sarah confessed what weighed on her. "Every night I left her alone, thinking I was doing right by working those shifts. I thought bruises were accidents, drawings were nightmares. I didn't see. How can I ever forgive myself?" Rebecca reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Sarah, you don't erase the past. You live differently now. Anna doesn't need a perfect mother, she needs a present one. And you are here," Carter added quietly. "Shadows thrive when people look away. You're not looking away anymore. That's what matters." Anna, listening from the couch, looked up. "Mommy, you're here now. That's enough." The simplicity of the child's words broke the last barrier inside Sarah's heart. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she hugged her daughter tightly, whispering promises that no shadow would ever steal her away again. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Lisa Chen continued to meet with Anna for therapy. Sometimes they met at the school, sometimes in the apartment with Sarah nearby. Anna practiced turning fear into art, learning to speak instead of hiding. "When I feel scared, I can draw the stars," she told Dr. Chen one morning, holding up a page covered in glittering dots. "That makes the shadows smaller." Dr. Chen smiled. "Exactly, sweetheart. And the stars remind you you're never alone." Rebecca often joined these sessions, reinforcing that her classroom would always be a safe place. Anna began raising her hand more in class, reading aloud with confidence, her laughter returning like a song long muted. The community, too, carried lessons from the ordeal. At church services, at PTA meetings, people spoke openly about vigilance, about listening to children's words, about the responsibility of neighbors to notice what often hides behind closed doors. The phrase "no more shadows" became something of a quiet motto, spoken among those who had followed the trial. A small mural even appeared on a wall near the playground, bright stars painted across a dark background, with the words in bold letters, "The light is stronger than the dark." Anna stared at it in awe when she first saw it, tugging on her mother's sleeve. "That's me," she whispered. Sarah kissed the top of her head. "Yes, baby. That's you." One evening, Carter, Rebecca, and Sarah sat on the stoop outside Unit 2B while Anna played with a group of kids in the courtyard, her laughter rising clear into the air. Sarah turned to them, her voice low. "I used to think justice was something cold, a gavel, a sentence, a number of years. But seeing her now, I think justice is this, her smile, her freedom." Rebecca nodded, tears in her eyes. "Justice isn't just the punishment, it's the restoration." Carter leaned back, watching Anna twirl beneath the fading light. "Justice is making sure the shadows don't come back. Not for her, not for any kid. As the sun dipped and the stars began to prick the sky, Anna ran up to them breathless, holding her bunny high. "Look," she said, pointing upward. "The real stars are out, not just the ones on my ceiling." Sarah wrapped her arm around her daughter. "And they'll always be there, just like us." Rebecca smiled softly. "No more shadows," Carter added, his voice deep with conviction. "Only light." That night, Anna fell asleep quickly, her bunny tucked against her cheek, the projector scattering constellations across her ceiling. Sarah sat in the doorway, watching her chest rise and fall. A peaceful rhythm that once felt impossible. Rebecca touched her shoulder gently. "She's safe now," Sarah whispered back. "We all are." In the quiet, Carter stood at the window, the potted plant he had brought catching the moonlight. For the first time since the ordeal began, he allowed himself a small smile. The predator was locked away, the child was healing, and the community had awakened. Justice had not erased the scars, but it had written a new story, one where courage silenced fear, where light overcame dark. And as the night deepened, the stars above Maple Grove Apartments shone brighter than ever, symbols of a little girl's victory, and a reminder to all who watched that truth, once spoken, can chase away even the deepest shadows. Spring came slowly to Oakwood, the gray of winter softening into green. At Maple Grove Elementary, the playground once again rang with the sounds of children's laughter. Jump ropes snapping against the pavement, and soccer balls bouncing across the grass. Among them was Anna Wilson, now 7 years old, running freely with her classmates. Her purple backpack still clung to her shoulders, but now it seemed less like armor and more like an accessory she chose to carry. The stuffed bunny, once her constant companion, had been gently retired to her bedroom shelf, replaced by books and drawings of stars that decorated her school binder. Rebecca Morgan stood at the edge of the playground, watching her student with a mix of pride and quiet awe. Just months ago, Anna had barely spoken above a whisper, her drawings haunted by dark figures and words of fear. Now, though still tender, she had begun to laugh again, her voice carried on the breeze like music. Rebecca felt her throat tighten with gratitude. She turned as Sarah approached, dressed in her hospital scrubs, her face tired but lit with something new hope. "She's different," Sarah said softly, her eyes on her daughter. "She runs like she owns the ground now." Rebecca smiled. "She's finding her footing. Healing isn't a straight line, but she's walking it with courage." She paused, then added, "And you are too." Sarah blinked back tears. "I used to think courage meant working double shifts, holding it all together. But I see now it means staying, listening, believing." She exhaled, shaky but proud. "I'm learning." That evening, Officer James Carter stopped by the apartment. He wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a worn jacket, but his presence filled the room with its usual solidity. He placed a folder on the table. "Official notice," he explained. "Phelps's appeal was denied. He'll serve the full sentence. No chance of early release." Sarah sagged into her chair, tears spilling freely. "Thank God," she whispered. "It's really over." Anna looked up from her coloring book, her eyes wide. "He can't come back?" Carter crouched beside her, his voice firm but gentle. "No, Anna. He's gone for good. And every year, the law will make sure he stays away. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Anna nodded, her small hand slipping into his. "I'm not afraid. Not when you're here." Carter felt a lump rise in his throat, but he simply gave her hand a squeeze. "And I always will be." In April, the community organized a gathering at the church hall, a tribute not just to Anna, but to resilience itself. Neighbors filled the room, tables lined with casseroles and pies, children darting between chairs. At the front stood a mural unveiled for the occasion, bright constellations painted across a dark canvas, the words "No More Shadows" written boldly in white. Rebecca had helped design it with the art students. Anna had added the final star herself. When the speeches began, Sarah stood trembling, but her voice carried steady across the room. "For a long time, I didn't see, I didn't hear, but my daughter taught me what truth sounds like, and what courage looks like. She saved me as much as she saved herself. And this community, this family carried us. when we could not carry ourselves. I will never stop being grateful. Rebecca spoke next, her words simple. We tell children to raise their voices, but often we forget to listen. Anna reminded us all of the power of listening. She reminded us that no shadow is stronger than the truth. Finally, Carter stepped forward, his tall frame commanding attention. He spoke with quiet conviction. Justice isn't just a verdict or a sentence, it's a promise. A promise that we will not let darkness win. Anna's courage lit the way, and it's our job now, every one of us, to keep carrying that light. When the applause filled the hall, Anna tugged at her mother's hand. Can I say something too? The crowd hushed as she stepped shyly to the front, her bunny clasped against her side for courage. Her voice was small but clear. Thank you for believing me. I wasn't brave alone. I had my mom, and Miss Morgan, and Officer Carter. And now I have all of you. The shadows are gone because we turned on the light. Tears glistened in nearly every eye as the room erupted into applause, neighbors rising to their feet. Sarah wept openly. Rebecca held her close, and Carter stood with quiet pride, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Afterward, as the hall emptied and the mural glowed in the soft light, Anna sat between her mother and her teacher, nibbling on a piece of pie. Do you think, she asked thoughtfully, the stars are happy we made them on the wall? Rebecca smiled. I think they're proud of you, Anna. You gave them new meaning. Sarah added softly. You gave us new meaning too. Carter, standing near the doorway, added in his deep, steady voice. And you reminded us that even the smallest light can end the darkest night. That night, back in Unit 2B, Anna placed her bunny carefully on the shelf beside her framed drawings. She climbed into bed, turned on her star projector, and whispered a prayer to the ceiling sky. Thank you for the light. Her eyes fluttered closed, her breathing slow and steady. Sarah stood in the doorway, Rebecca beside her, Carter leaning quietly against the wall. The three adults shared a look of relief, of exhaustion, of pride. Life had not been erased of pain, but it had been reshaped by resilience. As the stars danced across the ceiling, Rebecca whispered, "This is what victory looks like." Sarah nodded, tears glistening. And this time, it's ours. Carter's gaze softened as he added, "No more shadows, ever again. Me." And in that room filled with quiet light, a little girl slept soundly, her dreams unchained at last. A year had passed since the sentencing, and Oakwood had changed. Maple Grove apartments, once weighed down by silence and fear, now seemed brighter. Neighbors kept their lights on longer. Children played more freely in the courtyard, and a mural of stars on the side of the laundry building reminded everyone who passed. No more shadows. What had begun as a cry for help from a 6-year-old had grown into a symbol of vigilance and hope for an entire community. Anna Wilson, now 7 going on 8, had grown taller, her hair tied in neat braids that bounced when she ran. Her purple backpack was still with her, though now stuffed with books, art supplies, and the occasional cookie wrapped in foil by her mother. She carried it proudly, not as armor, but as a badge of resilience. At school, she had become known not for what she endured, but for what she created. Her artwork hung in the hallways, bright skies, sprawling gardens, and, always, stars. Rebecca Morgan, her teacher, marveled daily at Anna's transformation. During reading time, the little girl who once whispered in fear now volunteered eagerly, her voice clear and steady. Rebecca often caught herself blinking back tears, remembering the child curled against her shoulder, whispering about shadows. That memory still hurt, but it was balanced by the joy of seeing her student shine. She's not just healing, Rebecca thought as she watched Anna lead her classmates in a group project. She's leading. At home, Sarah Wilson had made changes too. She had switched shifts at the hospital, no longer working nights. No more leaving her alone in the dark, she told anyone who asked. It wasn't easy, the paychecks were smaller, the bills tighter, but Sarah carried herself differently now. There was a calmness in her voice when she tucked Anna in each evening, a certainty in her promises that she would always be there. Guilt lingered in the background, but it had softened, replaced by determination to never miss another cry for help. Officer James Carter still visited often, sometimes in uniform, sometimes not. He had become a fixture in their lives, less as a cop and more as family. Anna called him Uncle James now, and he accepted the title with a half-smile that softened the steel of his demeanor. One Saturday, he stopped by with a box of seedlings. "Thought we could start a little garden out back," he said, kneeling in the courtyard dirt with Anna as they planted sunflowers and tomatoes. Sarah watched from the balcony, her heart swelling at the sight. For the first time in years, their home wasn't just a place to survive, it was a place to grow. The town itself had changed. Inspired by Anna's case, Oakwood launched a program at the community center called Lightkeepers. It focused on teaching adults how to recognize signs of abuse and giving children safe spaces to speak. Rebecca volunteered every week, running workshops for parents and teachers. Sarah spoke once too, trembling at first. But her voice grew stronger as she told her story. "I missed the signs. But when I chose to listen, I became part of the light. We all can." Applause had filled the room, and when Anna proudly handed her mother a drawing of stars afterward, Sarah knew she had taken another step in healing. 1 year after the sentencing, a gathering was held at the church to mark the anniversary. It wasn't about Harold Phelps, his name was barely mentioned. It was about Anna, about the strength of children, and about the community that had risen together. The mural from the playground was recreated on a banner that hung over the stage, glittering stars painted by dozens of small hands. Rebecca spoke first, her voice filled with emotion. "A year ago, we witnessed courage that came from the smallest among us. Anna reminded us that truth matters, even when it trembles. She taught us that shadows cannot stand when we choose to see." Sarah followed, her words steady, her daughter's hand in hers. "I was a mother who thought working hard was enough, but my daughter showed me that presence matters more than paychecks, that listening can save lives. This year has taught me that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about writing a new story together." Finally, Carter stepped to the podium, his uniform crisp, his voice strong. Justice was served in the courtroom, but justice doesn't end there. It continues every day we choose to protect our children, every time we listen when they speak, every moment we choose light over indifference. Anna gave us the reminder we all needed. The smallest voice can carry the greatest truth. Then, to the surprise of many, Anna herself took the stage. She clutched her bunny, now worn but still loved, and spoke into the microphone. Her voice was soft, but the entire room leaned forward to hear. "I was afraid once, but I told. And you believed me. That's why the shadows are gone. If any kid is scared, I hope they know they can tell too. Because there will always be someone to listen." The hall erupted in applause, tears shining in nearly every eye. Sarah pulled her daughter into a hug, whispering, "You are my light." That night, back at Unit 2B, the apartment was quiet again. The garden in the courtyard had begun to sprout, small shoots of green stretching toward the stars. Inside, Rebecca stayed for tea while Carter helped Sarah fix a stubborn window latch. Anna sat on the floor drawing, her latest masterpiece, a picture of herself standing beneath a giant sky, surrounded by stars, her mother, her teacher, and Uncle James beside her. At the bottom, in bright yellow crayon, she wrote, "We are the light." When bedtime came, Sarah tucked her daughter in, turning on the star projector as she always did. Anna looked up at the glowing constellations and whispered, "It feels different now. The stars aren't just protecting me. They're celebrating." Sarah kissed her forehead. "That's because you gave them a reason to shine brighter." Rebecca lingered in the doorway, her heart full, while Carter stood with arms crossed, a rare smile tugging at his lips. For all three adults, the sight of Anna sleeping peacefully beneath her stars was proof that the long, hard road had been worth it. 1 year later, the shadows were gone, and in their place, a little girl had become a beacon not just for her family, not just for her school, but for an entire town. 3 years passed, and the seasons turned steadily over Oakwood. By the time Anna Wilson turned 10, she had grown into a confident, curious child with an energy that filled any room she entered. Her braids now brushed her shoulders, and her once timid voice had grown clearer, stronger. She still carried her purple backpack to school each day, though now it was patched with pins from school clubs and drawings her friends slipped inside. The stuffed bunny, now frayed at the ears, sat proudly on her bedroom shelf like a retired guardian. Surrounded by framed artwork of stars, she continued to draw. At Maple Grove Elementary, Anna was no longer just the girl who survived. She had become a leader. Teachers often pointed out how she looked out for the younger children, how she comforted them when they cried, how she always seemed to notice the quiet ones. "She has radar for kids who feel small," Rebecca Morgan said one afternoon to Sarah after school dismissal. "She notices what others miss, and she steps in before the shadows can grow." Rebecca, still teaching at the school, had seen her student transform from a trembling 6-year-old into a vibrant preteen. It was bittersweet. Anna was growing up fast. But every laugh, every bright drawing was proof that healing had not just happened, it had bloomed. Sarah, too, had changed. She had moved to a new position at the hospital with daytime shifts, trading higher pay for the assurance of always being home at night. She carried herself differently now, not with the guilt that once bent her shoulders, but with pride in the resilience of her daughter. On the anniversary of the trial each year, she lit a candle on the apartment balcony, whispering, "No more shadows," as a vow. James Carter remained a steady figure in their lives. Though still an officer, he had become more than law enforcement to Anna. He was family. "Uncle James," she called him in public without hesitation, and he wore the name like armor. He often stopped by to check the courtyard garden he had planted with her, now thriving with sunflowers, tomatoes, and herbs. "See, kiddo?" he told her one summer evening, crouching by the soil. "You plant light. You get light back." Anna grinned, her fingers brushing the petals of a sunflower taller than she was. "And shadows can't grow here anymore." One autumn, the community center asked Anna to speak at a gathering for lightkeepers, the program created in her honor. She was nervous at first, after all. She was only 10, but Rebecca, Sarah, and Carter encouraged her. "You don't have to say everything," Rebecca assured her. "Just tell them what's true for you now." When the evening came, the hall was full of parents, teachers, police officers, and neighbors. A banner with stars hung behind the podium. The same words written boldly, "No more shadows." Anna stepped up, her backpack on her shoulders, her bunny pin clipped to the strap for courage. She glanced at her mother, at Miss Morgan, at Uncle James. Then she spoke. "When I was little, I was afraid of the dark," she began, her voice trembling at first but growing steadier with each word. "I thought no one would believe me if I said the shadows hurt me. But then I told, and people listened. That's when I learned the truth. Shadows don't win when the light shows up. My teacher, my mom, and Officer Carter, they believed me. And when they did, I got brave too. Now I want to tell other kids. If you're scared, say it. Tell someone. Because someone will listen. And when you tell, the shadows get smaller. They go away." The room erupted in applause, but Anna simply smiled and stepped down, her mother's arms wrapping around her. Sarah whispered fiercely, "I've never been prouder." Rebecca's eyes brimmed with tears, and Carter stood quietly at the back, his chest swelling with pride. "She's more than a survivor," he thought. "She's a leader." In the weeks that followed, Anna's words spread. The local paper ran a story titled "The Girl Who Spoke." Teachers across the district began using her speech in lessons about courage. Parents repeated her words to their children at bedtime. Shadows don't win when the light shows up. Life wasn't perfect. There were still nights when Anna woke from dreams, still moments when Sarah's heart clenched with guilt. But now, those moments didn't control them. They had tools, they had community, and most of all, they had each other. One winter night, as snow dusted the rooftops of Maple Grove, Anna sat by the window drawing. Rebecca had stopped by after school, and Carter had joined them for dinner. The apartment glowed warm with laughter, the garden outside blanketed but resting for spring. Anna showed them her new picture, herself standing taller, holding a lantern that lit the stars above. "This is me now," she explained proudly. "Not just the stars on the ceiling. I carry the light too." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, whispering, "You always did, baby. You just didn't know it yet," Rebecca added softly. "And now you're showing everyone else the way." Carter ruffled her hair, his voice gruff but kind. "Kid, You turned your pain into a map for others. That's rare. That's brave. That night, as Anna drifted off to sleep beneath her projector stars, the adults lingered at the table. Do you ever think about how close it was? Sarah whispered, her hands tightening around her mug. How easily she could have stayed silent. How easily no one might have listened. Rebecca nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. I think about it every day, and I think about how her voice saved her. Saved all of us. Carter leaned back, gazing at the glow from Anna's room. She reminded us of the most important thing. We can't change the dark, but we can always choose to carry the light. In the silence that followed, the snow outside glistened under the street lamps, the apartment warm and safe. Anna's soft breathing filled the room, steady and strong. And as Sarah, Rebecca, and Carter sat together, they knew the story of the little girl who spoke would never be forgotten. 7 years later, the town of Oakwood gathered once more in the church hall. But this time the occasion was different. Anna Wilson was no longer a child. At 17, she stood tall and composed, her braids longer, her purple backpack replaced by a simple satchel. She wore a navy dress and carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had lived through shadows and learned to turn them into light. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now shone steady with purpose. The event was the annual Lightkeepers Conference, which had grown far beyond Oakwood. Teachers, counselors, law enforcement officers, and families from across the state came each year to learn, share, and remind one another of their responsibility to protect children's voices. And at the heart of the gathering was the girl who once whispered her truth into the dark. Sarah sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She had rebuilt her life with discipline and love, trading night shifts for stability, and pouring herself into advocacy alongside her daughter. Her face carried lines of age and sorrow, but also of strength. Beside her sat Rebecca Morgan, now nearing retirement, her hair streaked with silver but her eyes just as bright. She had never stopped teaching, never stopped guiding, and she had never stopped being part of Anna's life. And in the row behind them sat Officer James Carter, now a captain, his broad frame filling the bench, his stern features softened by a rare smile. For him, Anna was not just a case closed, but proof that the fight against darkness was worth every battle. Anna stepped to the podium. The hall hushed. She set down her notes but did not look at them. Her voice carried across the room, steady, clear. When I was 6 years old, I thought shadows would always win. I thought silence would keep me safe. But then I spoke, and people listened. My teacher, my mother, a police officer, who refused to let the dark take me, they all listened. And that changed everything. She paused, scanning the audience. But the truth is, not every child has someone who listens. Too many still whisper in the dark, hoping someone will hear. That's why we're here, to make sure their whispers never go unheard again. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a worn object, her old stuffed bunny. Its ears were frayed, its fabric faded, but it still carried the weight of memory. This was my shield once, she said softly. I held it when I was afraid. Now, I keep it to remind me of the little girl who thought she had no voice. I speak for her, and for every child like her. The audience sat rapt, many wiping away tears. Rebecca's hand pressed to her mouth, Sarah's shoulders shook as silent sobs rolled down her cheeks, and Carter's eyes glistened, though his face remained composed. Anna continued, her voice gaining strength. The shadows I faced were real, but they lost because of light. Light from a mother who chose to believe, from a teacher who saw the truth in a drawing, from an officer who refused to stop until justice came. And now, it's my turn to carry that light forward, because the fight isn't over. Every day, children face fear. Every day, they wonder if their voices matter. We have to keep showing them that they do. The room erupted in applause, thunderous and unrelenting. Anna stepped back, her chest rising and falling with relief, and returned to her seat beside her mother. Sarah grabbed her hand, whispering, "You've turned everything you lived through into strength. I can never tell you how proud I am." Rebecca leaned close, her voice trembling. "You are the bravest student I've ever taught." Carter, standing in the aisle as applause continued, gave her a single nod, his highest mark of respect. Later that evening, the four of them walked together through the courtyard of Maple Grove Apartments, now freshly painted and filled with flowers from the community garden. The mural still stood tall, bright stars across a dark sky with the words "No More Shadows." Anna paused before it, her gaze lingering. "I used to look at this and think it was about me," she said. "But now I see it's about everyone. It's about what happens when people stand together." Sarah slipped her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "It started with you, baby. You lit the first star." Anna shook her head gently. "I spoke, but you carried me. All of you. The light wasn't mine alone." Rebecca smiled softly. "And now, you've made it bigger than us. That's what legacy looks like." Carter's deep voice rumbled low. "You turned a wound into a weapon against the dark. That's rare. That's powerful. And it's yours." They stood in silence for a moment, looking up at the mural, then beyond it, at the real stars, pricking the night sky. Anna reached into her satchel, pulling out her sketchbook. She flipped it open to a fresh page and began to draw. 4 figures standing beneath a sky filled with stars. This time, she added others too: children, neighbors, strangers, everyone holding a lantern of light. At the bottom, she wrote, "The light grows when we share it." Rebecca's eyes brimmed with tears. Sarah kissed her daughter's temple. Carter rested a hand briefly on her shoulder. Anna smiled, the drawing glowing under the lamplight, and whispered, "No more shadows." That night, as Sarah tucked her daughter, nearly a woman now, into bed, Anna turned on her star projector one last time. The constellations lit the ceiling just as they had when she was 6, but now, the stars no longer felt like protection. They felt like a celebration, a reminder of how far she had come. As she drifted into sleep, Sarah stood in the doorway, Rebecca at her side, Carter leaning against the wall. Together, they watched the young woman who had once been a frightened little girl now sleep in peace. The journey had been long, marked by pain, fear, and struggle, but it had also been illuminated by courage, community, and love. In the silence of that night, the truth was undeniable. The shadows had lost. The light had not only survived, it had multiplied. And as Anna's steady breathing filled the room, the stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself was bearing witness to the triumph of a voice once silenced but never broken. The story of Anna teaches us that even the smallest voice can carry the greatest truth. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to speak despite it. When a child dares to tell, it is our duty as adults to listen, to believe, and to act. Justice is not only found in a courtroom, it is built each day in classrooms, in homes, and in communities that refuse to let shadows thrive in silence. The lasting lesson is clear. When we choose to stand together and shine our light, no darkness can prevail.